Welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Benjamin and you should subscribe so you can see more content like this. And this is actually part 2 of a short video series where we are creating a directory that is searchable, and we're doing that using a no-code tool called Bubble.io. So here we are, this is the directory. And just a quick recap, this is a directory of cognitive biases. If you don't know what a cognitive bias is, here to the right is a short description from Wikipedia. Cognitive bias is a systematic pattern of deviation from norm or rationality in judgment. Very interesting stuff. Also, you should follow me on Twitter. And we also have a secret button there for you who are attentive. You've already seen that. I will get back to that in the end of the video. Now, this is part 2. So part 2, we are going to curate the data we already have. We're going to get a lot more data on each specific cognitive bias, and then we're going to add that data into the database, and then we're going to create a pop-up. So when we click on a bias, we will get more information on that bias. So just a quick recap on what we did the last time to create this directory in the first place, and also how you can create any directory like this with any kind of data. So this is a general flow. So what we did was we found some structured data, in our case cognitive biases. Then we scraped that data with a web scraper. In our case we used a scraper called Simple Scraper, a very, very solid tool. And I recommend that you check it out if you haven't already. Then we processed the data or cleaned the data in the way that suited us. Then we uploaded the data into Bubble, and the data comes as a CSV file. So we also created data fields in Bubble database to match the CSV column names. Then we showed that data in a repeating group in Bubble. Then we create a search box, and we use a search plugin called Search and Autocorrect. And then we put a condition on the repeating group data source so that when the search box, misspelled here, when the search box is focused, we actually search for content that matches the input characters. And that's basically it. And if you haven't seen part number 1, this will probably confuse you. So see part number 1 and come back here and this will all make sense. Now, for part number 2, what we're going to do is we're going to find more data, which in our case is detailed info on each cognitive bias. We're going to scrape that data with web scraper, in our case, Simple Scraper. Then we're going to process that data. And that will probably take some more time for this part, but we'll get to that soon. Then we're going to upload that data. And this is the main part and the main learning in this video, is we're going to connect new data with our already existing data by doing bulk actions in the Bubble database. And then we're going to populate detailed data in a pop-up on click. So that's basically it. And these two flows right here, using these, you can create any type of directory you can imagine. As long as you have the data, and it can be very, very rich data, you can create stuff like this. So very excited to get going in part 2, and hope you are as well. Let's go. One thing I did mention is we are also going to change the design just a little bit, just to make it smaller and allowing us to have a more overview of the directory here. But first of all, let's go to the place where we found the data. So here, of course, we have all the biases, and as you probably remember, each bias has another link with a lot of information. So if we look at the data here with the text, we can see that there's a lot of different areas. And in my taste, this is too much information for me. I just want a summary. Luckily, there is actually a summary here. So I want to grab, ideally, I want to grab the summary of each bias. Now, if you remember from last time, we actually have the data already. Bias updated. Here is the data. And inside that data, we have what we need now, and that is these links. So we have all these links, boom. They link to these different settings. But let's start by scraping the site, and I'll show you what we can do. So we're scrape this website. We're going to add a property. I want to have the bias name. That is, of course, this one. And then I want the bias summary. And the summary is, no, it's just this one, only this. It's this box. Now, we are going to get all this data in just one field, so that is going to be something that we want to clean. And in this case, when there's a lot of unstructured, just text data like this, that will probably be the case, unless you're lucky enough that the HTML elements are structured in such a way that you can grab each title and subtext like this. But in our case, that's not how this data is structured. So boom, let's do this. Let's view results. And then we want to create a recipe called scraping biases. All right, create recipe, sure. Now the reason I am doing this is because now I can crawl URLs, and look at that. Run recipe. And just a heads up, I'm using the premium version of this, which allows me to have a lot of scraping credits. And that's basically because I love to scrape stuff. But you can get pretty far with just the free version of Simple Scraper as well. So while we are waiting for these URLs to be scraped, we can go back here. And let's change a little design-wise. I think this is okay. This is gonna look like a mess for a while. It'll be okay, I think, in the end. So what I'm doing here is just tidying up a little bit. Apply max width, yes. This can be a lot smaller, I think. All right, let's put that here. This can also be a lot smaller. Come on. Okay. Why is it acting like this? Okay, there we go. This badge, I don't know. Do we need this badge? Maybe. Bubble.io. If it's unclear at this point where we're building this, it's on Bubble.io. If you don't have an account, you should go and get an account straight away. All right. No, don't want to clone the page. Okay, so now it's just this button. What is a cognitive bias? Just making it smaller for us to right. That's okay. Putting that here. Putting that here. Let's see how that looks. Okay, I think it's a lot easier to look at. Obviously, this one is should probably add a max width to this one as well. It's not on the. Let's put it here. Okay, like so. Probably like that. All right, so that's okay for now. Let's see if we're done here. Are we done? Results. Yes, perfect. So I want to download the CSV. And if we look at this data now, we can see, like I mentioned before, that we have just a huge text field here with all the summary data. Completely unstructured, just one text block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this data a little bit. And that's quite tedious, but there are only so many biases here. So I'm just going to do it quickly and get back to you. What we're going to do after that is we're going to upload this data in a new data type to Bubble, and then we're going to connect this data with the already existing biases in Bubble. So be right back. Okay, so now we're back and I've parsed some of the data. I only did 10 examples here, and I can complete the rest later, but this is just to show you how to do this. So now we have this data. I've downloaded it as a CSV file. Now if we look at our step-by-step here, we have found more data, we have scraped the data, and now I just cleaned the data. So now it's time to upload that data into Bubble. But to do that, we also first have to have a thing in the database that corresponds to what we're going to upload. Now we already have biases here with name, short description, and test link. And I want to create bias detail information, and I don't want to create it on this item, but I want to create a sub item with this detailed information and then link that detailed information to each bias. So what I'm going to create now is a new type called bias detailed, and in that we have a bias name text field. We have also related biases, and if we look at the data here, we can see that we have related biases, and they are separated by a semicolon. So we have related biases, they are text, it is a list, because there are multiple in some, and then we have bias summary, text, then we have example 1, text, and example 2, also a text. All right, so this is it. Now let's go to app data. Let's go to upload, new upload. Actually, we should also do this in live, because it's in the live version that we have all the data already on the cognitive biases. So let's go to the live version. All right, upload, pick a file, bias updated, type of data, bias detailed, map, bias name, summary, related biases, semicolon, separates these items, example 1, example 2, all right, upload, 3, 2, 1, and we're done. All right, so now, yes, we're done. So now we can see that if we go to bias detailed, we have all those 10 biases here. Now to the interesting and fun stuff. We're going to do a bulk action on the data here to connect the detailed bias on every single bias here. So let's go back to the development. And in our process, we're now onto this purple box here, connect new data with previous data, bulk action in database. So let's do that. All right, so here we are in the development database. Now I want to go to our original bias here, and I want to add bias detailed, and I want that to be bias detailed, right? Yes. So now here, that's how we're going to link the data. We have our bias and we have some rich information in the bias detailed items, and we're going to link these two now. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we have to go to the backend workflow. And the backend workflow functionality is only available if you have at least a personal plan on Bubble. I think that's $29 a month. So very reasonable price for that plan. And the backend workflow allows us to do a lot of cool things. So we're going to expose an API endpoint. Let's call that match data, or match bias data even. And we're just going to expose everything here. We are going to change the bias. Bias. All right. And now when we have this API endpoint, we can call this endpoint, right? And build workflows. So I want to build a workflow. I want to change things. So what we're doing here is we're going to be adding the detailed information to each bias that we already had in the database, so that the data is connected. Now we have one field in both data types that's identical, and that's the name. So our searching parameter here is going to be the name. So first of all, we want to make changes to things, and we want to make changes to bias, and we want to make changes to all biases. So we just do a search for bias here, and then we're changing bias detailed, and we're letting what we're going to do is we're going to change the bias details on each bias by matching the bias detailed here with by the name. So this bias name, boom. So what we are doing here is we're changing a list of biases. So we're just searching for biases, and then we want to change the field on each bias detailed. So if we go back here, we can see that bias has a bias detailed, and that's a bias detailed thing. So that's this thing in this thing here. So we're searching for that, and then we're changing the bias details. And what bias details are we adding? Well, we're adding the ones that have the same name as this bias. So why is it red? Well, it's because this returns a list of details or bias details, but in actuality, as we know, this is just one item, but we still have to specify that. So that's the first item, boom, and that's it. So if we deploy this, it will allow us to do this thing on the data. Then we go to the live version, go to data, we go to app data, we go to bias. We're doing a bulk action. We're calling match bias data here. So what I did is I'm going to bias in the app data, under data. I'm clicking bulk action. I'm calling the endpoint or API workflow, boom. You're about to run this workflow, blah, blah. Okay, run workflow. Okay, so now the bulk operation is successful. Now let's look at a bias just to confirm that we have a bias detailed. Bias detailed. Let's look this way. Boom. Bias detailed. Perfect, perfect. So yeah, that's the case for the 10 that we have now. As you can see, the name matches. So now we have connected bias detailed with bias. So let's move on then in our flow here. So we have done this. Now all we have to do is populate detailed data in Popup on click. All right. So let's go back to the development version where we can actually change the design. and we're going to biases, and we're going to create a pop-up. Pop-up specific bias, the content is bias, and we want that to show when somebody clicks a bias. So when they click, we show pop-up specific bias, and we also want to send the right data into the pop-up. So we are sending to the pop-up, we're sending current sales bias into the pop-up, and then we're showing the bias. So when we're clicking, it takes all the data associated with this particular sales bias and puts it into the pop-up. So what that means is that now we can reference data in the pop-up. So if we just let's take these items into the specific bias here. Oops. I also want, okay, let's do like this. Okay, so we have bias, content bias here. Let's do parent groups bias, bias name. And then we want a short summary. So we want parent groups bias, bias details, bias summary at this point. I'm gonna make this a lot smaller. I think 16 because there's quite a large amount of text. And let's make this smaller as well. Let's do 44. All right. Like so. We are going to align these later on as well, but okay. Let's duplicate, and now we're looking at examples. So maybe even 28, 22. Is that unreasonable? No, it's not. Okay, so example 1. We're putting that underneath the summary. And then we have example 1 text here. So obviously you can do anything you want with this pop-up. Parent groups, blah, 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 bias detail, bias. Example 1. Duplicate. Example 2. And example 2. All right. So let's see what it looks like at this point. And let's leave the badge there for now. So, okay, deploy. Let's look at base rate fallacy. And here we are. Base rate fallacy. A lot of text. We have to make this smaller. A lot smaller. And example 1, also a lot of text. Example 2, also a lot of text. But as you can see, it works. We have succeeded. So now we're going to tidy this up a little bit. So I'm just going to make this a lot smaller. I'm going to make it 12 because there's so much text usually on these. Let's just say built on bubble.io here. Let's keep this simple. Something we could do if we wanted is that we could do a similar bulk operation and connect the related biases to each bias and have them here or something. But it's outside of the scope of this video. If you want me to do that, just put that in comments and I might do it. Let's also add a link to the original link. Maybe go to, right? What's that called? I saw it. I saw it open. Right. So when open is clicked, open URL, a new tab, URL. parents groups bias test link, the element ID, let's say just 2. Put that like so. And that is it. Let's deploy that and just look at how that looks. Base rate fallacy. All right, here we are, much better. A lot of text, but you know, this is some complicated stuff, some of these biases, but it's really good with examples. Now this isn't perfect in the way it looks. We could always tidy this up a little bit more. Let's open this one just to make sure. Okay, here we are, back to the original. So that's it for this part 2 in how we can connect data and curate and enrich our data. Now all that's left is this secret button. Can you guess what it is? It's a link. Go to avalanlabs.co/academy and sign up for the waiting list. We're working on a NoCode fundamentals course where we're going to cover from the ground up how to build digital products with all the best NoCode tools, with an emphasis on Bubble and Webflow and Integromat, and also the mobile NoCode tools like Searchable, connecting Airtable bases, all of this stuff, you know, there's such a huge opportunity here to be able to fast build stuff, whether you need a simple tool for yourself, an internal tool in your team, a quick MVP, rapid prototyping, an actual production scale app, whether that's a web app with complex workflows or just a simple mobile app, or automations in your business processes or your day-to-day processes as an individual. I mean, the sky's the limit when it comes to NoCode, and it's still such a new area or new industry, we can call it. So you need to get familiar. So this course is about to give you that familiarity from the ground up. So sign up to this. I'm very excited about building this out for you guys. And if there's something in particular that you want in this course, sign up and tell me about it. All right. And as always, subscribe. See you on the next video. Bye.